Siis kui sa ennast näed, nüüd näed.
Sellel ekraanil näen küll ennast, aga see väike ekraan näitab natuke valesti.
Palju siia tuleb?
Nobody more than. Rohkem ei tulegi praegust.
Oota, aga kas sa tahad öelda, et ei tulegi füüsiliselt?
Jaa, me räägime füüsiliselt tühjale saalile peaaegu.
Mina mõtlesin, et tuleb täis, et sellepärast jään siia nurga taha, et rahvale kohe anda.
No vot.
Okei, ma kaon siis taha üldsegi. Ma kaon taha ära. Ma sellepärast tulin siia, et täis oleks tulnud. Ma ei tea, okei, ma lähen taha. Mina arvasin, et tuleb rahvast. Parem on ikka olnud ju.
Aga seekord mõtlesin, et teeme salvestuse sügisel. Kuule, ütle Joel, et ära siis veel alustada või ütle Toomas, kui sa valmis on.
Lõikab pärast ära.
Mina olen kogu olemas.
So now I am ready to speak about the graduation thesis. Hello everybody who is watching and learning to me. Today I and Valdo Praust will give some mini lectures about the graduation thesis. About the bachelor thesis in our sense. I am Toomas Lepikult. You may know me. I am the manager of this process for bachelor degree. And you can turn with questions to me and to Valdo Praust in the future. You can find me at this mail address at the screen, and you can call me, and physically you can find me on the 5th floor. But more precisely, I will speak about the organization of the process, of the writing of the thesis, of this process, and about the defense process. Afterwards, Valdo will speak about the writing itself, more specific questions. So what is the thesis at all? You have studied some particular courses during your curriculum. You have studied to program, you have studied to administer some kind of systems, some topics on cybersecurity and so on. So you have many special knowledge and skills. But at last you have to prove to some committee, to defense committees, that you are worth of the graduation. And generally the graduation thesis is the final work you will do, and you have to defend it also before the committee. So the final thesis, formally, it is written in 20, 30, 40 pages paper, and on this paper you must reflect and solve some kind of problem. So here in the list I have listed the properties of the excellent thesis. First, the thesis is independent research. That is, you must yourself to compose your work, to pose some kind of problem, to find the best methods for solving this problem, and last to find the solution and present it. And of course to do some kind of generalizations and corollaries also about your result. So your independent research first with clear result. An example of the result can be, for example, one algorithm designed. You can find that the Google is not the best searching engine. You can compose some kind of better algorithm. You can test some kind of software. You can even compose the material of new cybersecurity course, for example. You can process or analyze something and so on. So that is, you may pose some kind of problem or arise some kind of questions and try to find the answer to these questions or solve the problem. And every excellent thesis must have the clear result. Very good if you can say or write during 2 or 3 lines what is your main result. The result you have gained yourself during your work. So your subject and your problem must be timely or novel. That is the problem you are solving. That may not be out of date. For example, probably you know some very kind of database systems, Fox-based, DBase I have handled, but these are out of date of tens of years. That is not a good idea to write your thesis about the very, very old systems, or generally about the problems that are solved tens of years ago. So your topic must be novel. So, and generally novel in this sense also that the problem must not be solved until your work. That is, generally you will solve the unsolved problems. If you give the solution to any existing, add something to the existing solution, then it depends if your contribution to the new solution is heavy enough, that good, excellent thesis. But if you some very little nitty-gritty on some small problem or small solution, that is this novelty of your work is not enough. You may also analyze or read or show also the alternative or similar approaches to your problem. Now let's say you program something, some new neural network model. You can use one model, another model, or one method, another method. You may compare and find which of these methods is the best and then use this best method or best model. But parallelly, you may give also the alternatives. What are the alternative ways to solve the same problem? So you may use the correct research methods. That is, for every problem there are many ways to solve it, many methods to use. But generally one of these methods is the best one. Now let's say if you have the hammer, the only tool you have, then you tend to see all the world as nails. You can apply your hammer on these nails. But if occasionally you find the screw, in this case, you know the hammer is not the best tool to apply. You may use a screwdriver instead of hammer. That is, you may find the correct methods and apply these methods. So your work must also have the reasonable and reliable result. That is, you may be able to apply your result in the real world. That is, your work must have also the practical value. Your work must be the well-structured and well-reasoned and analytical work. That is, every scientific work and the bachelor thesis also the first step on the scientific writing. Every scientific work must have the prescribed structure. I have told about this structure in my course, Fundamental of Thesis, but I repeat it once more here. The very general and rough division is that the first third of your work deals with the overall background. It sets up the problem, research questions, deals with the state of art on this scope, and so on. That is overall philosophy about your work is first third of your work. Then follows the analytical part. In analytical part, you analyze appropriate literature, you find the sources for your analysis, you analyze the different methods, different ways of solving your problem, and very generally speaking, you do the theoretical work. And the last part is the practical work. You apply these methods you have analyzed in the previous chapter on your particular problem. You get some results. Of course, you can analyze also in this stage the results, which is done in a good way, which were the problems, how you solved these problems, and so on, so on. But generally, you are doing the practical work and get the results. And in the last part, summary, you generalize your results and give the overall answers to your research questions. So, well-structured and well-balanced, that is almost the same thing as I said. So your work must have heavy enough the analytical part and heavy enough the practical part. If you write an analytical part during 30 pages and follows the practical part on 1 or 2 pages, that's not the balanced work, and vice versa. Both of these main parts must be more or less equal size. And last not least, your work must be formatted correctly. That is, you must apply the prescribed template. No misspelling is allowed. Your volume is in the prescribed range, 25-30 pages of main part of your work, and so on. So try to be very strict in this last point. If your work in other points here is an excellent one, but formatted badly, that is your excellent work can get the lower grade. And here is the list. What kind of writing is not a good thesis? First, the essay on a selected topic or referat is not a thesis. You must have clearly result on your work. If the reviewer or any other reader does not find any special result on your work, then it is a bad case. So if you write only referat, you describe what other people have done or written on this field, that is not a good thesis. So next, if your result is not clearly defined, not clearly defines a research problem, you must, in the first part, in the first third of your work, prescribe directly what is your problem, what are you solving. Very good if you can put this setup of problem into the separate chapter that every reader can find without any difficulties. And the wording of this setup of problem must be very clear. Every reader must understand what kind of problem are you solving. And if this definition is not clearly expressed, that is again one feature of weak work. So all the choices you made in your work, all these choices must be justified or proved. That is, you can't to say, I use this JavaScript because this is the only hammer I have, only programming language I know. Probably there are some other languages also. They may be the better choices for you than this JavaScript as example. So you may, if you are doing correctly, you may compare the features of every language that can be used in solving this problem. Very good if you can write down some kind of table where you compare the sites of one or another language and so on. And last you find, for my problem, this language is the best one I can use. So everything you do or you make a choice somewhere must be justified. So the author contribution is very important. That is, the work is your own contribution to the knowledge, and you may underline, this here is my result for which I am applying for the scientific degree. If you can't to show what you have personally done during this work, again, this is a bad case for diploma or bachelor work. So next bad case, the work seems to that everything is technically correct, but there is no fundamental content. Now, for example, you like to play the computer games using the computers. You program some kind of new elementary computer games. You write some kind of theory about this, demonstrates that you have programmed this new game, but generally that is not that heavy enough. That is, if the reader does not find the fundamental content or the solution to the new problem, that is again the bad case. And the last and the worst case is plagiarism. That is, if you copy without citing the results of other authors, that is called the plagiarism. That is it's a very strict way to fall on the defense. And of course, there may be also other incorrectly formatted issues. So here again, once this general structure of your work, you may not put the headings or chapters using this slide, but your work must contain these mandatory parts. Introductory part, where you explain the state of the art, you explain what kind of problem you will solve, and you can also give the very brief overview of the results you are going to find. If you put the setup of problems into the introduction part, then you may caption it as a sub-caption, setup of problems, and with 3, 5, 6 sentences to describe what is your problem you are solving. Then must follow the analysis part. As I said, if general overview introduction part, the general overview follows the analysis and follows the practical work. So in analysis, you give the overview of the appropriate literature. Of course, the more scientifically important this literature is, the better. If you give the review only the Wikipedia article, that is not the best choice. Then you give the overview of your methodology. If you have used more than one methodology, then all these methodologies must be present in this part. And when you have to find the best methodology you are applying, and also other possible options for solving the problem. If you have many methods, if you have many possible softwares to use, so on, then you may do the multiple choices. All these choices must be analyzed in this part. And then follows the work progress or practical part. You describe how you apply this method you have chosen on your particular problem. How did you get the results? Which results you have got? Which were the obstacles, and so on. So you describe how did you manage with the solving of the problem, and the results of the work. Every work has some kind of results, and you have to prescribe what kind of results did you get. And the very important last part is also the summary part. There, among other things, must contain these, as I said, 2 or 3 lines of your writing where you can generalize and say, oh, here is my main result, answer to the question or solution to the problem for which I am applying for the bachelor degree. So the last part of your thesis is appendices. At least one appendix is mandatory. That is so-called license for the library to publish your work. But there may be also other appendices also. Into appendices you put the material that is related to your work, but not very tightly. That is, if the reader is reading your work without having a look at the appendices, he generally understands about what you are speaking. But the specific reader, for example, your reviewer, he tries to find also some kind of snitty things or more precise information that you can put into appendices. As examples, you can put into appendices lists of program codes, some big figures or big tables, or any materials that is, let's say, too big to put into the main text. Where to find the subject for your work? One very good place to find the subject is the internship or your workplace. Everywhere you are working on some kind of problems, you can also fix these problems, to write it down and try to find the solutions to the problems. And if you word your problem in quite good and appropriate way, that could be the subject for your bachelor thesis. If you do some kind of special work tasks during your internship, you describe these work tasks and solutions in your internship report. But next you can generalize these tasks to your bachelor thesis. So here is one very exact slide, timetable for this semester for writing and defending the thesis. So I comment each item here. First thing you see is that you will defend 3 times your work. Defense of draft, preliminary defense, and final defense. And that is because we try to help you with writing in your writing process, to give you advices to get the excellent result on final research. But first deadline you see here is 11th of September. That is so-called red line day when you declare or submit your declaration in the individual study plan. First semester this time, you will declare also your thesis. That is your describe on some web form your plans. In very short form, you may put around the preliminary title of your work and the supervisor's name. If you do not know the supervisor's name until this point, no problem. You can correct this web form in the future also. But important, if you are going to defend this semester, you have to declare this specific subject until 11th of September. That is next week. The next date here is 28th of September. Then you have to submit the draft in Moodle course. Just a moment, I try to demonstrate this. So this is the draft for your bachelor thesis. Okay. So you write here the formal data about your supervisor, about yourself, the title of your work in Estonian and in English, and then briefly in this table you describe your problem, you describe your goal, the relevance, scope and limitations, and so on. Well, let's say about 2 or 3 pages text you may write here and describe your plans about your bachelor thesis. So last you see also the places for signature of your and your supervisor. Until this 28th of September, the signatures are not necessary. That is another date when the signed draft is needed. So you submit this draft in Moodle until 28th of September. Then follows the first defense of the draft from October the 3rd until the 6th of October. Before the committee, you speak about your plans regarding your diploma or bachelor thesis, and the committee tries to correct you or give you some kind of advices how to do better your draft. And after this first draft, you have to correct your draft using these advices you have got from the committee and submit it once again until the next date that is not prescribed here. But yes, generally the signed version you will submit. I think that was the 1st of November. Next date, submission of work for preliminary defense. That is at the beginning of December. At this point, you have to write about 90-95% of your work. That is, the main parts of your work must be present in this version. You have time only for the small changes. No, you can correct some kind of mistakes, but the general structure and the main part of your work must be done. So next, the preliminary defense at the beginning or in the middle of December, again before the committee, you present your work you have done. Committee has questions to you. You may answer these questions. Again, you can get the advices from the committee. Then in the next feature, you may correct your work according to these advices, but two important decisions of Commission are made also. First decision is your work that you have pre-defended, is it ready to present for final defense? Has this work any perspective to defend successfully at the final defense? So the decision of the committee is forward this work to the final defense or not. If yes, then the committee assigns a reviewer, the person who is specialist on your specific field. He reads it, writes some kind of critics about it, and positive and negative, and poses at least 3 questions. You get this review before the defense, before the final defense. You can read it and to prepare the answer to this review also. But before this final defense follows the application in study information system. You may write there the application for the defense, and then again is a very important date. I think that mistake 18th, not the 8th of December. But on this application, you write your subject, your supervisor, and some other formal data also. But that is absolutely mandatory. If you miss this application, you will not defend in this semester at least. Then at the beginning of next year, you have to submit the final version of your work, and the final defense is at the end of January. So, before you will defend your final work, you must follow some conditions, and better if you control your curricula, your study plan in the dean's office. That is, all the modules, all the subjects must be done before you will defend your final work. If you have some bills, if you have to pay something to our university, all these payments must also be done before the final defense. That is, the curricula must be fulfilled, except of the final defense itself. So submission in study information system must be made. Then the subject in this submission must be described very precisely, because this subject goes onto your very important document, diploma supplement. So, and supervisor, the person who is helping you during the process, he must also accept your declaration in the study information system. If he accepts it, that is a good choice. But sometimes when the collaboration with the supervisor has not been tight enough, for example, the supervisor sees a version of your work first time only at the end of semester, then of course he has also the choice to not accept your declaration. And in this case, you are not allowed to defend again. So, then you have to submit the thesis. That means upload the PDF file into the Moodle, and you have also fill out the metadata form, some data about your work again. And again, do not forget that on the final defense, the most important man is the chairman. The chairman, he has also the possibility to not allow your work to the final defense. generally this can be the case when the Committee of Pre-Defense has forwarded your work conditionally. If you write again this part of your work, if you do the new summary, for example, to your work, then you will be allowed to final defense. And in this case, the chairman is this man who can interrupt your way if you have not fulfilled these requirements. So here is a prescription of the defense procedure. First, keep in mind that the defense of your final work is a procedural occasion. That is, you may take it into account when you are dress coding, and at all that is quite ceremonial. The most important person, I said, is the chairman, next the committee members, and every time you will given a word, you may express yourself quite politely. So very first thing you have to do is be in time. Before the defense, you know the order of the defending and the exact date and the beginning time of the session. Try to be at the place in the auditorium about 15 minutes before the defense. Then you have time to prepare, for example, to copy your slides onto the presentation computer and so on. So next, be sure that all the materials are present. You may copy your slide series onto the memory stick, onto the website, perhaps on some other places, on the presentation computer, and as I said, and so on. So take into account the Moody rule every time. So you have time to present your work during 7 and time until 10 minutes, and in this point, try again be quite exact. Try to fit into this interval. If you speak too shortly, then the committee thinks perhaps that you have nothing to say. But if you will speak more than 10 minutes, then as the first case, the chairman can interrupt you. And of course, a very long speech may express all the committee members, and they can be nervous. So try to fit into this interval. So you may prepare as many slides until you have the minutes. At least 7-10 slides are optimal. And the mandatory parts of your presentation are the setup of problem, methodology you have used, and results you have got. If you have time during this 10 minutes, you can demonstrate, for example, your solution if you have something to demonstrate, and so on. And you will finish your work with the final slide. Thank you for attention, and please not to ask to pose your questions. That is the work of the chairman. So you may underline your contribution to the knowledge. As I said, you may have the main result of your work, and please be brave and say what this is my result for which I am applying for the degree. Or if this work would not be done, then the world would be collapsed. So if you are answering the questions, you get the questions from the reviewer, from the committee, from the other people in the auditorium, or from the whole world. Then try to be brief and exact. If you know answer very good, demonstrate your knowledge. If you do not know the answer, no, that can be the case that this question is out of your scope. You may answer in this manner. Thank you for your interesting question, but this I have not considered this question because this is out of scope. But in the near future, I will consider these questions with pleasure. So try to be exact and honest with our answering. And last, you will have the final speech. That is the point where you render the thanks to the helpers, to the committee, for example, first on the chairman, then supervisor, your family members, and so on. So the final grade will be given by committee, and that is again very important to have the good expression on the committee. That is, your defense speech must be prepared excellently. That is immediate expression on the committee. But generally, the committee will grade the following aspects of your work. I have listed it repeatedly, but here once again. First, the actuality of the subject. Is your subject, your problems actual in the current world or not, is the question that is graded. Then the structure. As I said, you can't write about 30 pages about the analytical part and 1 page about the practical part. That is not balanced work, and the structure is bad. So the structure must be balanced. Next, the methods and materials you have applied in your thesis. As I said, you can apply many methods, but generally 1 or 2 of these methods may be the best ones. You can use several tools, but again, you may find the optimal tools. And how you find the optimal solutions, that is also graded. Again, certainly the final result is one point what is graded by committee. The formatting, as I said, is also very important. You can lose the best grades if you format your work not precisely. The formats of the student, of course, again, I have repeatedly said that the presentation and answering the questions and final speech are very important sides of your work. And last one that generally is taken into account are the opinions of reviewers and supervisor. But again, the reviewer's opinion is not the last one. The last grade you will get from the commission. That I want to say that if you get a bad grade from the reviewer, then the word is not broken until this point. If you present and defend your work excellently, you can get the positive grade. So here are some links for more information about your thesis writing. First, very important, absolutely mandatory, that you will use this Moodle course. Here is also the self-registration key. All the information about the thesis you will get through this Moodle course. First, you are writing in English, find the information in English below. On the first pages, you can find the information in Estonian. Important next, select your curriculum. Some advertisements are specific to curricula, and that is important that you select the right curriculum. Next, some supporting materials in Estonian, in English also. Yes, here is the timetable. A part of the timetable I have put on my slide, but here is the whole timetable. So here comes the links to our seminar recordings and so on. And here you find the templates for documents. For example, the draft of the thesis. You can also have a look what contains the supervisor's opinion and what does contains the reviewer opinion. But here are the uploading links. On the first link, you will upload your draft of your work. Next, the version for the preliminary defense, and so on until the last one. So let's find this course and register for this course. Next, web address or link is a link to our school's materials on the formatting and defending the thesis. And last two are some good readings when you are writing your thesis. Very good material, very many useful hints for writing. So I have finished my presentation. Thank you for attention, and now Valdo will continue.
So, in addition to the Thomas speech, I wish to point out some special things which are related to the cybersecurity and the defending of the thesis of cybersecurity. At first, do not forget that cybersecurity plays very specific role in the world of IT. At first, cybersecurity is an independent topic. We can concern special topics which are devoted to cybersecurity. At second, cybersecurity is, of course, the property of every element in IT. Even in the case when we do not deal especially with the cybersecurity, if we implement or if we use some detail in IT, in software, in hardware, procedure, and so on, each of such kind of things has a special property concerning of cybersecurity. Even it means that even these things, where direct connection with cybersecurity is not shown, they play an important role in the cybersecurity. And the third one, cybersecurity is much more wider discipline than IT. In the contemporary world, it is typically considered that cybersecurity must be implemented in integrated way for a main or business process. Main or business process is one step behind IT. Do not forget that each IT problem is not the thing itself. Each IT problem actually solves some non-IT problem, which is typically called a problem from the world of the main or business process. And if we implement some security, measures or safeguards, it's typically reasonable to do in the level of the main or business process. Having these three very special properties of cybersecurity into account, if you think a little bit, then it leads to the 3 main cases. What are the main specifics of the diploma or any final work which is related with cybersecurity? The first case is much more simplest case. The thesis is clearly dedicated to solving a certain cybersecurity issue. Cybersecurity is revealed in the headline, and it is quite clear that we deal with security, we solve a security problem, and so on, and so on, and so on. Second case is a little bit more complicated. It is actually the case that thesis is not itself dedicated to solving actually a cybersecurity issue. But if you try to find a solving method, Thomas said a lot about solving method, the solving methods came from the field of cybersecurity. You solve the problem itself is not related to cybersecurity, but the methods, how you actually solve the problem, they use cybersecurity. And beside of these 2 cases, sometimes it is possible also a little bit more rare. But even in some cases possible third case. It's actually the case then this is not dedicated to solving of cybersecurity issue. The methods and ways and techniques which you actually use for the solving of the issue are not the special cybersecurity items, but implementing of these, the implementing of cybersecurity mechanisms, among other mechanisms, play a very important role. Therefore, if you consider the topic without considering of cybersecurity, the result is quite poor. You are forced to use some cybersecurity technique, despite of the fact that the problem itself and the solving method are not from the cybersecurity, but for the solving method techniques, cybersecurity plays an important role. It can be said that the third case is much more complicated. If you choose the third one. During our curriculum, cybersecurity engineering curriculum, we have a lot of examples, lot of cases which fall to the case number 3, if you choose such a method. It is much more difficult way. In this case, certainly prepare to prove that cybersecurity and implementing not cybersecurity mechanism, but the cybersecurity related details which you use for solving of your problem is important. And without considering the cybersecurity, the result will be very pure. So, it is first thing which I wish to point out. At second, there are some specifics of defending speech. My 30-year experience have seen that the best way to prepare your defending speech, even in the case of cybersecurity, is to separate 3 different things. If you make a defending speech, please concentrate to the following 3 items. You solve the problem. If you solve the problem at first, please define the previous situation. Or in more exact ways, please describe the situation before the solving of the actual problem and the necessity for solving the problem why you perform your work. It must be very clearly stated why you decided to perform your work. When you did not find the answer, the result will be typically very poor. When you have an already answer why you perform your work, you describe the situation before your work. At second, please describe shortly your analysis and choices you actually done during of your work. And please do not take into account that in the very narrow discipline, all of members of committee are specialists. Probably the members of committee have a wider experience and education, but concerning very narrow technique, for example, malware technique, cryptographic technique, network security technique, they are not familiar. Please describe in a general way. Do not go very deeply to details. If Commission needs some details, they will ask corresponding questions. And that third, describe the result, what you have done. How the real world has changed after your work is finished. What is different in comparison with point number 1 when nothing is done. So this is my short additions to the Thomas presentation. Thank you.
So thank you once again. And now our presentations are over. Good luck in writing and defending the thesis.